Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into today's video. We're going to have a look at how the oceans have been behaving through the course of the winter. We're at the first day of spring now, certainly in terms of the statistics. Anyway, it's meteorologically questionable because you can still get wintry weather at any point, really, through March and on into April as well. So we can't rule out the possibility that winter will strike back. In fact, in the next couple of days, I think we'll have some snow in the north and the west. But yeah, we've at least statistically come to the end of winter and we've started spring. So I want to have a quick look at how the oceans have been performing this winter. I think it's been a pretty big factor actually in what's gone on, and then perhaps a little bit of a projection through to next winter, just see how a couple of the longer range models are just seeing the oceans as we go through to next winter. A long way off, of course, next winter, so that really is going to be around speculation and just for fun. Now, if I get on with the update, just want to say about the ads. There's links to articles on most pages at gasoffice.com. Have a browse through the widgets. Any articles that you're interested in, please click through. You'll be able to often read those articles. At the same time, Gasoffice will get a royalty fee on what you're doing. Thanks so much for doing that. Generally, just play around with the ads. They're there for your amusement. They're also there to pay for the website. So thanks so much for getting involved. And thanks for doing that. Right, let's start off with the latest sea surface temperature anomaly chart from NOAA, N-O-A-A, the forecast agency in the United States. We're specifically interested in the Pacific and the Atlantic oceans. These are the two big drivers, certainly in terms of the northern hemisphere anyway. So let's start off with the Pacific. Now, remember when we was doing the winter updates, we was looking for an El Nino. We haven't really had an El Nino, but we have had an El Nino type signature. So we've certainly got warmer areas in this central and western part of the equatorial Pacific. It's definitely warmer there compared to the eastern part of the equatorial Pacific off the coast of Peru, where it's relatively cool. So whilst we probably haven't got an El Nino designated here, we have got at least a Madoki or Madiki El Nino type signal. So that part of the winter forecast did come off. By the way, I will be reviewing winter forecast when all the facts and figures become available at the UK Met Office. I'll do a video where we review whether it's winter 2014-15 forecast. I think it's been pretty good really overall, but I want to wait until all these statistics are in. But anyway, a big part of the winter forecast, the winter updates, was the signature from Madoki or Madiki El Nino with warmer waters in the central western Pacific compared to the eastern equatorial Pacific. The main area, though, I think that's been important through this winter, very similar to last winter, is this big warm area here up to the northeastern part of the Pacific Ocean, the northern Pacific Ocean. So it's around Alaska and down this coast of Canada and the United States. Got all of this warm water up here. We had it last winter. We've had it again this winter. I thought this was probably going to moderate as we go through this winter because it's very unusual actually to get it warm up there for a prolonged period of time. So we've had it for like 2 winters now, this going on. But yeah, very interesting whether that lasts into next winter as well. At some point it will start cooling down because typically it is quite a cold part of the oceans across the world. Now this ridge, this warmth up here helps to promote a ridge in this sort of zone. So we get a ridge up here around Alaska, and what that does is sends the jet stream on a northwest to southeast track across the United States, something like that. So on this side of the jet stream it tends to be warm on the western side where we've got the ridge, whereas with the trough of low pressure on the northern and eastern side of the jet stream, somewhere around here, it will of course be cold. So we get it very, very cold on this eastern and northeastern side of America, and that's basically been the setup through last winter. It's the same setup through this winter actually, whilst some parts of the far northeast around Boston, Massachusetts, New England, those sort of areas have been even colder and even snowier than last winter. Generally, it's not quite as cold as it was last winter. It's not quite as cold across the north and the east of the states, particularly central parts of the states. But it's been a very, very cold winter by any means, and February really has been phenomenally cold. Now, what's also very interesting here is that we've had a very unusually cold Atlantic. So we've got all this cold water over here in the Atlantic Ocean, this sort of horseshoe shape of cold stretching out from sort of Ireland and going down across the coast or off the coast of Portugal and Spain, and then down off the coast of North Africa. So what we've actually got going on here this winter, or what we've had going on here, I should say, this winter, going on into the spring now, of course, is a warm PDO and a cold AMO. So in this zone, we've had a warm PDO, which is the Pacific Decadal Oscillation, and that's an oscillation in the ocean that changes around every 25 to 30 years. You get warming and cooling phases. And in the Atlantic Ocean, we've had correspondingly, I'll just do that there, a cold AMO, Atlantic Multi-Decadal Oscillation type winter. I don't think it's actually reached the threshold of the cold AMO. It's got very, very close. Certainly through this February, it really has cooled down a lot in the Atlantic, on our side of the Atlantic Ocean. Anyway, now this is sort of going against the overall trend of where we are in these cycles, because in theory we should be the other way round at the moment. We should be having a cold PDO, and we should be having a warm AMO. So we're sort of going against the long-term trend here at the moment. I think at some point this will revert back to the area in the cycle that it should be. So the Pacific should go cold and the Atlantic should go warm. But this could be, certainly in terms of the Atlantic, I'm not sure about the Pacific, because it didn't really change to the cold PDO. It didn't really change until around the year 2000, or early in the 2000s anyway. So I'm not really sure about what's going on in the Pacific, but in the Atlantic, this could be the prelude actually to the change to the cold AMO, which is going to probably occur around 2020, something like that. It went warm into warm phase around 1995, so we've done 15, 20 years of the warm AMO, albeit we've gone cold at the moment. And we've probably got another 5 to 10 years of that warm AMO to go. But this is probably the very first sort of indication, I would suggest, that the Atlantic is on its way to going into its cold phase. Whilst I think it will come back up again, and it will warm a lot over probably the next 2 or 3 years. Certainly it's around 2020 we should get a few more warm years coming through. Overall, I think we will be heading towards that cold AMO as we get through into the 2020s. What's happening in the Pacific, though, is I can't really explain this, because we're a long way from where you would expect to be shifting towards a warm AMO. We're only sort of 10, 15 years into the cold, PDO, I should say. We're only really 10 to 15 years into the cold PDO. So I can't really explain why we should be getting this sort of change into the warm PDO. I think it will revert back to the cold PDO, but we're sort of deviating very much in terms of the Pacific and the Atlantic sea surface temperatures situations. We're deviating from where you would expect us to be. As I say, this is very similar to what happened last winter. So here we are for the sea surface temperature anomaly from the end of February 2014, and you see that overall big similarities really in the setup in the northern Atlantic and Pacific. So we've got this warm water up here again, up in the northeast of the Pacific, promoting the ridge. We've got a lot of cold water in the Atlantic, albeit not to the same extent as we've got we've had this winter. So again, it's a very similar idea with the jet stream doing that sort of movement across America, the trough up there, the ridge down there, all the cold air coming down into northern eastern parts, central parts of the states. And then last winter, of course, we had the jet stream running across the Atlantic, really blew the jet stream up. Luckily, we've not had it to the same extent this winter, so been lucky in that regard. And the equatorial Pacific substantially different last winter to this winter. Last winter we actually had a very slight La Nina type signature. Wasn't a La Nina, but very tight, very slight La Nina type signal last winter, compared to the weak Modoki El Nino signature that we've had this winter. So there are differences, but overall the Pacific and Atlantic, Northern Pacific and Northern Atlantic anyway, show showing quite similar sort of situations from last winter to this winter. Now let's have a look at 2013. This was the last time we had a cold winter in the UK and across Europe, of course, and look at this, with completely different setup. Instead of all that warmth in the northeastern part of the Pacific, we see we've got cold up here. So we've got a cold PDO for your winter of 2012-2013, and we've got a tripole in the Atlantic. The Atlantic is significantly warmer than is the case has been the case this winter. So we've got the warm, cold and warm zones there through the Atlantic Ocean. And you notice that the cold is very limited, and it's in a specific band, which is just here through this central part of the Atlantic and backing off in towards the eastern coast of the United States, with warmth in the tropics and warmth to the south of Greenland. So very, very different Atlantic and Pacific sea surface temperature anomalies in the winter of 2012-2013, the last time we had a cold winter, compared to what we've had last winter and this winter. And this is the sort of thing that we're going to be looking for, I think, if we want a cold winter in the next few years. We're going to be looking to try and get the PDO to go cold and get the cold water back here in the northeastern part of the Pacific. At the same time, we're going to want the Atlantic to warm up. You will think that having a cold Atlantic favours having colder winters. Is not the case. You really want a warm Atlantic, or you want specific zones of warmth. You want warmth to be to the south of Greenland through the tropics, with a colder band through the central part of the Atlantic. So when I come back and look at how the sea surface temperature anomalies have stacked up through this winter, with all of this warmth in the northeastern part of the Pacific Ocean, or this cold water here in the eastern part of the Atlantic Ocean, when I look at that, it's not surprising really that we've had generally quite a mildish sort of winter, albeit nowhere near as mild as it was last winter. But it certainly hasn't been a cold winter, and looking at those sea surface temperature anomalies, I wouldn't expect a cold winter, really. So this doesn't explain everything that's gone on through this winter, but it certainly explains part of what's gone on during the course of this winter. Now let's just have a look at some projections from the CFS and JAMSTEC IOD models, see how they want to develop things as we go through the year. So we're going to start off with the sea surface temperature anomalies as they are now for the coming season, for spring. These are the sea surface temperature anomalies for March to May. And you notice that the model is seeing a continuation of the pattern we've got now. And you would expect that, to be honest. Spring is a time really when the oceans tend to change a great deal. So certainly in terms of the northeastern Pacific, we keep this sort of warm PDO signature. So yeah, we're definitely having the warm PDO signature there in the Pacific through the course of the spring, and we've got all of this cold water here in the northern Atlantic as well. It is seeming that it warms up a little bit down towards Spain and Portugal off the coast of North Africa. I'm not sure that's quite right, actually. I suspect that cold area will keep going around this sort of zone right way through into this spring as well. So in this zone we're cold, in this zone, or relatively cold in this zone we're warm. Now, we see what the projection from CFS V2 is as we get through to the autumn. So this takes us to the 3-monthly period, August, September, October. This is as far as we can go with CFS V2 at the moment. But it takes us towards the end of the year. And you notice there's very little change going on here, actually. Certainly in terms of the northeastern Pacific, it is not seeing any cooling really taking place in this sort of zone. So we're keeping it warm just here, and particularly up here towards the end of the year. The Atlantic is warming a little bit. The tropical Atlantic is getting a bit warmer down there. So it is seeing that the warm AMO is beginning to re-emerge a little bit. We're losing the cold through the central part of the Atlantic. That's shrinking, and generally overall I think the Atlantic is warming up just a little bit. Actually, if this area here was to turn warm, it doesn't show it anymore, but if it was to turn warm, then with the cold just here and the warmth just here, we probably wouldn't be all that far from a tripole there towards the end of the year. But there's not enough to go on to say that's the way it's going, but it's is warming up a little bit in the Atlantic later on in the year with the CFSV2, but for the Pacific, it looks like it's remaining warm up to the end of the year. Now, if this continues as we go on in towards the winter, well, I think the United States is going to have a similar winter to what happened last winter and this winter. Now, I've had a hunch that next winter would be moderating for America, that they wouldn't have such extreme cold over in America next winter. We'd see a different pattern. But to do that, we've got to cool this water down, particularly up here. We've got to see this cooling down so that we lose that ridge of high pressure around Alaska and the Pacific coast of America and Canada. Let's have a look at the JAMSTEC, see how that sees things developing through the year. So we start off again with the spring. These are the CSF temperature anomalies for March to May, and of course we know what the pattern is at the moment, and it keeps it going through into the spring. We've got the warm PDO signature just there. We've got the cold AMO signature just there. This takes it further down, that cold water, off the coast of Spain, Portugal, and down into North Africa as well. So that's a little bit wrong. Actually, the signature is to go down there with quite cold water and have warmth just here. As I say, this is very much deviating from where you would expect us to be with both the Pacific and the Atlantic. These are big deviations from where we are in terms of the overall bigger cycle of the cold PDO and the warm AMO, but it sees that this sort of pattern continues certainly into the spring. Now let's see how it sees things by the autumn. These are the CSF temperatures for September to November, and you see it isn't really seeing any particular change to the pattern. So it wants to keep the warmth going up here in the northeast of the Pacific, going down into that zone just there. It keeps it warm through there. It wants to keep the cold water here going around here. It's not seeing any change really in the setup between the Pacific and the Atlantic, certainly the North Pacific and the North Atlantic. Notice also the JAMSTEC wants to keep that El Nino signature going. In fact, it strengthens it a little bit as it goes through towards the autumn. So there's no sign of a swing back to La Nina. Now, to cool the PDO down, we may need to go to a La Nina. It could be that we're going to keep this warmth here in the northeast of the Pacific until the equatorial Pacific goes into its cold phase. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what's going to happen here. And certainly there's no sign of the La Nina this year. We may have to wait until 2016, 2017 to get a La Nina. That could be when the Pacific starts to cool with it, the northern Pacific. But it's interesting that both CFSV2 and the JAMSTEC are seeing no real change to this pattern. And if this is right, as we get through to the end of the year, as we get through to next winter, winter 2015-16, if we keep this warmth up here, we are going to continue to promote ridging. So we're going to get high pressure up there. We're going to probably get low pressure somewhere around here. The same pattern that we've had throughout the last couple of winters is probably going to go on as the jet stream goes into that sort of zone. What happens for us, again, is going to be dependent on what's going on in the Atlantic, but there's nothing certainly on that chart to suggest a tripod. If we keep those sort of Atlantic temperature anomalies, we're going to keep the jet stream running through something like that. This is very typical of what we had through the end of the 1980s and into the early part of the 1990s. We did have this kind of setup through much of the 80s and 90s, warm PDO, cold AMO, and we didn't get all that many cold winters. So we did have a nice run of cold winters through the middle part of the 1980s. But we're sort of reverting, certainly with the oceans anyway, we're reverting back towards, say, the early 1990s, which is not that great if you're looking for a cold winter. Now, these projections are a very long way off. This only takes us to the autumn anyway. So, just as with any other long-range model output, this could be as wrong as any other projection. Don't take it too seriously by any means. It's just a heads up of where these two models are seeing things going as we get through towards the end of the year. Not seeing any great changes. The other big factor for next winter is going to be solar activity. This is the solar cycle's sunspot number progression, again from NOAA in the United States. This takes us up to the end of last year, up to December. We can see that we've generally been in this sort of zone just here for this winter. So we've been below where it was in terms of sunspot activity last winter, where we reached the solar maximum, but we haven't gone down into this sort of zone, which is where we was for 2012, 2013, and we're certainly not in this sort of zone where we was with those really cold winters around 2009 and 2010. That was solar minimum. We will be getting towards that sort of area by the end of this decade. Now, for next winter, the progression for 2015-2016 is for us to be somewhere around here in terms of the projection. This may not actually come off quite as this is showing. It could be more progressive in dropping us down with the activity than this red line suggests, or it may not drop as quick as this. We're going to have to wait and see how it pans out. But if the projection is right, we should be somewhere around here next winter, which is more or less coming into this zone just here, which is where it was around 2012, 2013. So solar activity should be significantly less next winter compared to what it's been this winter, although we probably will still be getting spikes upwards even as we're trending downwards, so we may still be spiking up into these sort of areas just here next winter. Difficult to say quite how weak the activity will be next winter, but we'll certainly be on a downwards trend. We're already on a downwards trend really compared to last winter, 13-14. We're already trending downwards. We should be trending further down as we go through into next winter, and if we can get down into the sort of area we was in around 2012, 2013, it may be a little bit more successful in achieving some blocking, because when you've got weak solar activity, the overall idea is that you're weakening the jet stream and you're allowing blocking to develop. But in terms of the oceans, and the oceans are very important, particularly for us, in terms of the North Atlantic Oscillation and the pattern around Iceland and the Azores, the ocean temperatures are important for that. And there's no great signs there that we're going to start to warm the Atlantic significantly and cool the Pacific. So that's what I'm going to be looking for as we go ahead towards the winter. And of course, the winter updates won't be starting until September, albeit I'll do the NAO forecast based on May sea surface temperature in the Atlantic. I'll do that at the start of June. But the overall winter updates for 15-16 won't be starting until we get through to September. So we'll have to wait and see where things go. That's the latest idea, and I just wanted to give you a bit of a heads up about why I think this winter has gone the way it's gone, and why last winter went the way it went as well. Be very interesting to see where we go for winter of 2015-2016. Hope you found the video interesting, and that's it for now. Thanks for watching.